in these sessions. I'm going to be challenging us in some parts of this session so that you can do some self-reflection and then be able to chart a proper course for yourself. Okay? Having said that, somebody can be helping me on the chat box. There are some of these things I'm going to say, and I want you to capture it in the chat box so that people are able to get hold of them. I'm going to start with two quick opening thoughts, and I want you to reflect on those. Two quick opening thoughts. And this thing just hit me this morning as I was thinking of what we are sharing today about growth. Two thoughts formed in my heart. Number one is this, that growth, and indeed all of life itself, is self-paced. Growth is self-paced. I don't know how many of you have done academic programs or some programs somewhere you are doing an online course and it is self-paced. In other words, you may choose to complete it in 3 weeks, yeah? Or you may choose to complete it in 3 months. You may also choose to complete it in 30 months. It is self-paced. Life is self-paced and growth is self-paced. In other words, it is up to you how fast you grow. And this is very heavy. So there is no group growth. We don't grow as Joshua Leadership Project. We don't grow, as a church. We don't grow as a company all together. All the employees are growing. No, there is no group growth. In fact, there is no age group growth too. So we don't say, okay, so all of you are 20 years, you have all graduated. You have all grown now. It doesn't happen. Growth is a choice. You choose your pace, right? You could accelerate. You can decide to decelerate. You can also even decide to drop off the race entirely. That's how life is structured. So it is self-paced. That's the first thought. The second thought that framed in my mind today was, every dream you have is valid. I think somebody said that. Every dream is valid. So whatever you see about your future is valid, including not seeing anything at all. They are all valid. All right? So if you put these two thoughts together, growth is self-paced and every dream is valid. So what that means is that there is an intentionality to growing. I'm going to be challenging us in various ways to that. So I challenge myself, to really, push the boundaries of where we are and get to some higher places, in our journey of life. All right. So the first exercise we're going to do, and then I'm going to play a video, and I've decided to frame the entire conversation I'm going to have with you around this video. I mean, there are things I can tell you about accelerating your personal transformation and growth, but I've chosen to just give it some focus. So we'll play a video, and all the things I'm going to be saying will be based out of this video. That's what I've decided to do for today. Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I would like you to go to the chat box and put the answers there. So when you think about growth, what are the words that come to mind? So we say grow, yeah? We want growth, right? What are the words that come to your mind? Can you go to the chat box and just put those words? The words that come to mind when you think about growth. If you hear the word grow or growth, what comes to mind? Okay? I'll give you an example. One word that comes to my mind is improvement. Okay? So tell me your own words. Okay? So about personal development. What are that words? Please just keep it coming. I like to know the words that come to your mind when you hear growth, right? Increase, development, amazing. What else is coming through? Development. I have a lot of developments here. Can I see all these things? Acceleration, advancement. Keep it coming. What words come to mind? Maturity, moving to the next or higher stage. Go on. Just keep it coming. What words? Because this is very important for our conversation. What was promotion? Awesome. Who else? What else? Elevate. Good. What else? Enlargement. Just keep it coming. What was come to mind? Advancement. Thank you. Advancement. All right. So movement, expansion, movement from one step to another, and so on and so on. Development and expansion, step up, getting bigger, getting better, increase capacity, becoming better today than yesterday. Awesome. This is amazing, right? So just keep these words in your mind as we have this conversation, all right? So the conversation is, how do we get better? How do we advance? And this advancement can come in various ways. Those of you that went through our program of last November, I don't know whether it was November or December, our Emerge program, you remember we walked us through, the areas that you have to grow. What are the elements and components? And one of those things has to do with meaning, right? Meaning, i.e., you don't just grow everywhere, you grow meaningfully. You grow in areas that make meaning to your life, all right? So hold those thoughts, all right? And I'll be asking you this, and you don't need to put it in the chat box. You can write it in your note. In what areas of your life have you seen discernible growth this year already? In what areas have you seen discernible growth? Very clear-cut growth, all right? Now, put that in your note, not in the chat box. I'd like you to just have that, because when you reflect on that, it helps you also to reflect on some of the areas you thought you should have grown in, but you've not been able to grow in them, right? So make a note to self on the areas you have grown in. Okay. So I was saying, the two thoughts I shared with you, they are about intentionality, right? Growth is a choice. So you make up your mind whether you want to grow or not grow. And it's not a wish, really. So if you look at even the number of participants today, I think that there were up to 70 people that indicated interest to be here, but you have 34. So in the end, it's not a wish. It is a decision. Growth is a decision. Okay. I'm going to share a video. Please listen very intently to the video. It's a long one, but I think it's worth our listening. It's about 13 minutes. So please don't get distracted. Please don't go away. Sit and listen to this. This will be very useful. I've had to play this video so many times. I can't count the number of times I've played this video, right? Because it makes a lot of sense. You can pick a number of things from it. And please make notes on what, is sticking out for you, because you are going to share those thoughts, with the rest of our people. All right, so I'm going to share my screen.
Picture it. A big, sweaty, tattooed man in a cowboy hat and chaps is in the ring as the arena full of fans cheer him on. Their hero, Cowboy Gator McGraw. Gator bounces off the ropes and is quickly body slammed to the mat. His wild opponent leaps into the air, crashing down onto Gator's ribcage. Gator struggles to breathe, wondering, is this really what my father wanted for me? That wild man in the chaps was me. And the answer to the question, surprisingly, is yes. I grew up watching professional wrestling with my dad. And like him, I loved everything about it. The showmanship, the athletic skill, the drama. I'd be this little boy bouncing all over our living room, pretending to be my favorite wrestlers from TV. My dad actually reminded me a little bit of Hulk Hogan, but I was Hulk Hogan and he was Andre the Giant. I'd get all serious on him and say things like, Dad, someday I am going to be world heavyweight champion. And he would usually smile and very calmly say, okay, then I guess I can count on you to be my retirement fund. When I was 16, a small wrestling show came to my little town in Minnesota, and I couldn't believe it. Nothing like that had ever come to my town before. So, of course, I got to the arena early in the morning, the day of the show, waiting out in the parking lot to see if I could spot some wrestlers pulling up in their cars. it wasn't as creepy as it sounds. But I could definitely tell who the wrestlers were just by the way they walked. They were tall and confident and intimidating, with their tank tops and Zubas and fanny packs. Why wouldn't I want to be them? All I could think about was, who are these people and what are they like? And how did they become wrestlers? So before the show started, I walked into this tiny arena, more like a gymnasium, and I asked them if I could help set up the wrestling ring. Sure, kid, no problem. And then I pleaded with them to show me some wrestling moves. Sure, kid, no problem. Man, they would just punch and kick me hard, but I never complained. They would come to my town for one night every couple of months that year, and then poof, the next day, they were gone. By the next year, they finally told me about an actual wrestling training camp that one of the wrestlers was running, and I begged my parents to sign me up. Next thing I knew, I was a high school senior by day and wrestling in front of live audiences by night. I had this giant poster of an alligator hanging on my bedroom wall, so when I needed to come up with a wrestling name at the last minute and Jesse the Body Ventura was already taken, I went with Gator. I also wrestled in a t-shirt and camouflage pants because that's what I had in my closet. I hadn't quite figured out how to develop my own persona yet, but I was learning. It was sort of like an apprenticeship. But I was a wrestler, and my dad would come to all of my matches wearing a t-shirt that said Papa Gator across the front. And he bragged to his friends about how his son was going to pay for his retirement someday. And I would have. Not long after I started wrestling, my dad unexpectedly passed away. And as you can imagine, especially as a teenage boy, it destroyed me. If you've ever lost someone, you know what a difficult time that can be. Your mind, it's not working right. The whole thing is just so surreal. I wanted to feel normal again, even if it was for just a second, so I went back to wrestling almost immediately. Wrestling belonged to me and my dad, you know? So there I was, sitting in the locker room, getting ready for a match within days of my dad passing away. He was gone. And sitting there alone, it felt like I was hiding. But it also felt like I needed to be there. One of the wrestlers who'd been on the scene a long time knew what I was going through, and he came over to see how I was holding up. I couldn't get the words out. I just said, I don't know what I'm doing. And then we just sat there in silence, just silence. Before he got up to get ready for his own match, he gave me this piece of advice that would change the entire direction of my life. He told me the best wrestlers are just themselves, but turned up. He said successful wrestlers find the traits within themselves are the strongest at and make those the focus of who they become in the ring. So there I sat, a scared teenager who didn't know who he was or why he was even wrestling anymore. I looked around the locker room at some of the other wrestlers and I thought, I look so different. How can I ever be like them? And then it hit me. That's the moment I realized I didn't have to be like them. What I did have to do was find out, what did it mean to be me? What made me unique, and how could I use it to my advantage? Now, I knew I wasn't a chiseled athlete like some of these guys, but I really didn't care. So the first thing I thought was, how can I amplify something as simple as comfortable with my own body? I didn't know. And then I thought, Speedo. Or trunks, as we call them in wrestling. Yeah, trunks. I could be this big guy who was comfortable wearing these little trunks in front of a bunch of strangers. So I ditched the t-shirt and camouflage pants, and Gator's new wardrobe was born. I was also pretty good at drawing cartoons, so I wondered if I could turn that up. I could design my own wrestling costumes. So each pair of trunks would have its own unique design and color, all of them completely different. And extremely comfortable, by the way. And I was also the funny kid in school, believe it or not. So I thought maybe I could turn that up. Maybe I could be the boy, go from the boy who made his buddies laugh to the man who could rally hundreds or thousands. So I committed to the idea that my character wasn't going to be as scary as some of the others. I'd be hilarious from the moment I walked into the arena. With every wrestling match, I dug deeper. I found out that I could laugh at myself. So this guy would dance and sing his entrance music all the way to the ring. That was dancing, by the way. I found out that I was an okay wrestler, but I was an even better entertainer. And turning myself up made me unforgettable to the fans. I was trying to find those things about me, the simple things that were special, and then ask, how can I turn them up? Now, I knew I wanted my character to be a man's man like my dad was. I thought, what's more of a man's man than a cowboy? And that's when Gator became Cowboy Gator. Yeah, I needed a last name. And I thought about it until my head hurt. I couldn't come up with anything. I was sitting there watching TV one night, flipping through the channels, and this commercial comes on, talking about a country singer who had just won an Entertainer of the Year award, Tim McGraw. He's a cool cowboy with a great last name, and I liked his music. It was just all part of my process, but I just kept turning myself up until I became Cowboy Gator McGraw. And I knew that if I kept turning myself up and pushing myself harder, the opportunities would come. And then it finally happened. In the middle of the night, I got a phone call. It was the call I wish my dad was around to hear. The WWE, the biggest wrestling organization in the world, wanted me to come and be a part of Monday Night Raw. Yes, all of my hard work and miles on the road were finally paying off. I got to walk down the WWE Raw entrance ramp on live television, dressed up as a fake security guard to escort another wrestler to the ring. Sure, I was disappointed I didn't get to wrestle, but very few wrestlers get any kind of call from the WWE, maybe one in a few hundred. And becoming Cowboy Gator McGraw is what got me there. So instead of walking away that day, I decided to turn myself up again and become the best security guard I could. In fact, I did it so well, I was the only guard to get a close-up on TV that night. It's a big deal, you know? And I got to sit backstage that entire day with some of the most famous pro wrestlers in the world, some of which were heroes of mine as a kid. And I got to listen to them and learn from them. And for that day, I was accepted as one of them. Maybe my experience with the WWE wasn't ideal. I mean, I didn't get to wrestle, but it made me work harder, turning myself up louder year after year. I was becoming the biggest version of myself in the ring, and other people took notice. Before I knew it, I'd gone from wrestling maybe once a month in Minnesota to as often as 4 times a week all over the United States on the independent wrestling circuit. I was literally living my dream. While wrestling over the next few years, I suffered a pretty bad shoulder injury right around the same time that my wife and I found out that we were expecting our first child. And I know what you're thinking, but believe me when I say those 2 events are completely unrelated. But I needed shoulder surgery, and I wanted to be home with my family. It was my turn to be a dad. So on July 27th, 2007, I wrestled my final match and walked away from professional wrestling to pursue the next chapter of my life. And as time passed, the strangest things started to happen. I found out that once someone has been turned up, it's pretty hard to turn them down. I left the ring, but Gator stayed with me, and I used a turned-up version of myself every day. My beautiful wife has been with me through this entire journey, and by the way, she does not like pro wrestling. Like at all. But she was always my biggest fan. She still is. She knows there's always going to be some part of Gator McGraw in here, and she wants our daughter and twin sons to discover themselves the way that I did, but probably with fewer body slams and steel chair shots to the head. I mean, do you know how many times she's had to remind me not to clothesline the referees at my kids' soccer games? I mean, it was just the one time, and my daughter was clearly fouled. As a parent now, I've begun to realize that my dad wanted something much more valuable than a retirement fund. Like most parents, he just wanted his kids to reach their fullest potential. I'm trying to teach my children that turning yourself up is just not some perfect idea of how to be great. It's a way of living. constantly looking for what makes you different and how you can amplify it for the world to see. And by the way, my kids don't like wrestling either. But that's okay with me, because they each have their own unique talents that can be turned up just like the rest of us. My one son, he's a whiz at electronics, so maybe helping him turn up makes him become the next Steve Jobs. My other son and my daughter, they're great at art, so maybe helping them turn up their gifts helps them become the next Pablo Picasso. You never know what you have the ability to do until you dig. And don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I mean, look around. They say that if you get nervous in front of an audience, you just imagine them in their underwear, but then I think, hey, I wrestled in less. Look, the wrestling circus doesn't need to come to your town before you get an invitation to be the real you, the bigger, more stunning version of yourself. It doesn't even necessarily come from our parents. Turning yourself up means looking inward toward our true selves and harnessing the voice that says, maybe, just maybe, I am more than I thought I was. Thank you.
How was that? I'd like you to go to the chat box and just, I hope you understood the Oyibo English. Just go to the chat box. How was that? Just let's have some responses. How was that? How did you find it? Just do that quickly, and I'm going to jump right in. How was it? How was it? How did you find this speech? Just let's see what you got. How was it? Really inspiring. Great. Okay. All right. And while this is coming on, if there are some things that came out very strong for you, you can also type them in there. I will tell you my own. One of the things that hits me each time he says it, he said, when someone is turned up, it is impossible to turn them down again. You just carry that everywhere. So you're a very excellent medical doctor. You will find that you carry the same thing in all the other things you do. Best wrestlers are themselves. Amazing. Yeah, Ami says that's my line as well. Once you are turned on, you can't be turned off again. First step in life is self-discovery. Awesome. That's from Stella. Keep bringing it up. I'd like to hear from you because, I mean, that's all we are here for. Yeah? You can, I guess you want to say, you can be more. Keep trying. Keep trying. That's awesome. From eBay. Yeah? Let's share more. Share your thoughts. Don't be in the background and just be quiet, right? Yeah, so what else is coming through? Who else has something to say? Can I get a few more thoughts? Oh, inspiring. We are meant to shine. There's this one I just missed out now. What is it? Oh, okay, you never know what you are capable of until you dig deeper. This is huge. This is huge. Thank you. The moment you discover you do you. Amazing. And that's the best thing to do. Just do you. Turning yourself on and pushing yourself up. Amazing. All right. Now, this is incredible. As I said, I've listened to this TED Talk a couple of times. And each time I listen to it, it's very inspiring. Very, very inspiring. And so I had something all prepared for this session. I had all these modules I had created, you know, the way I normally think. I've thought through a couple of things. And by the way, there's somebody here that just find the simple things about you, right? That are special. So I turned it to hashtag simple is special. Somebody can help me type that in. Hashtag simple is special. Just some simple things about you, and that can really make you special. Simple is special. Okay, so I was saying, I had this whole thing all drawn up, you know, to come and teach you, you know, I wanted to build this whole spectrum that says growth starts as a mindset, and then it becomes a discipline, and then you turn it into a culture or habit, and then you scale it, and then you iterate. Amazing formula, right? So I'll give it to you again. Growth starts as a mindset, and then you build it into a discipline, and then you turn it into a culture or habit, and then you just scale it. And next, you iterate. In other words, you repeat the process again. Yeah? And I think that's a very powerful formula. So maybe some other time we'll delve into that. Maybe I'll just repeat it one last time. Growth starts as a mindset. You build it into a discipline. Then it becomes a culture or habit. And then you just scale it. And then you iterate. And guys, you can actually take this simple formula and, pin it into your career, your ministry, your business. So it starts with a mindset, how you think, and then it requires discipline because you need to be doing certain things very sacrificially. And then it turns into a regular habit, a routine. And then you find a way to blow it up. And Mike called it, you need to get turned on. You just turn it on, just turn it on, and it goes higher and higher. And then what next? You repeat the process. You just iterate. So that was a simple formula I was going to teach you. But I listened to this story again. I said, okay, so by the way, why don't we make it a bit more memorable? I'm going to delve into this same TED Talk, and then we start building some principles or laws out of it. All right, so let's jump in if you are ready. Is anybody ready? Just type in the chat box ready, so I know you are there. You ready? Okay, people are ready. All right, great. So I'm going to just retell this story, right? I'm going to retell this story, and please do some reflections on it. I will build principles out of it as I tell the story, retell it. So how did he start his story? He said he grew up watching wrestling because his father loved wrestling. His father loved wrestling. And so he started liking what he was seeing. Please note the things I'm saying. He started liking what he was seeing. Yeah. So the first thing we need to reflect about growth, first principle from this is what I have called the law of the mirror. The law of the mirror. People become what people see consistently. The law of the mirror. We become what we see consistently. Yeah? So it starts with what you surround yourself with. So I'll be asking you, what is it that you have surrounded yourself with? Now, that actually begins to shape your mindset. All right? It shapes who you eventually become. What are you surrounding yourself? And this is a very, very, very powerful thing. Okay? Chances are that if Mike, this wrestler, by the way, I hope you know, his name is called Mike Kenny. If Mike Kenny was exposed to a singing father, chances are that he might not have become a wrestler. Does it make sense to you? Yeah. All right. So people become what eventually they see. So don't be telling me that you want to be a great footballer and all your life you are watching African Magic. All right. You become what you see. Do you remember the Jacob principle of taking some, plain animals and making them mates in some plain pools, and then he gets some, stripped animals with spots and so on, and then he has these popular stems that were spotted, and then as they mate, looking at that, what is inside them take on the reflection of what they were seeing while mating. So it's the law of the mirror. What you see eventually begin to shape your mindset, begin to shape who you become. So I'll be asking you, the biggest dreams that you have today, Who have you surrounded yourself with? What have you surrounded yourself with? I was telling a story over the other weekend when we were in the retreat about some person around me who wants to be a great footballer. All right. And we go to meet a football counselor, a consultant in football. And the first thing the consultant says, show me your social media handles. Which social media handle are you in? He said, I'm on Instagram. And he takes the guy's phone. I say, log on to your Instagram, open your Instagram, and he opened it. So who are the people you are following on Instagram? And they were comedians and all kinds of people. He said, no. So you can't become what this dream that is in your heart, you can't become it because you are not seeing what you plan to become. And so I want to challenge you. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Who are the closest people to you? All right. So this is very important. It is the law of the mirror. Your network matters. Your network matters. Your network matters. Because your network shapes your thoughts. Your thoughts about you are shaped by your... I don't know whether that makes sense. Your thoughts about yourself, your thoughts about you, they are shaped by your network. They shape the reality around you. All right? Okay, so you need to think about that. How your interests, a reflection of what you see consistently around you. All right, so your interests are shaped by the things you see consistently around you. All right, so hold that thought. So that's thought number one. And when I say this, I like you to do your own personal reflections, right? So don't decouple. You know, that's what we do, and that's what makes us not to grow. So you have this dream that you have, but it doesn't reflect in what you throw yourself into on a daily basis. Have you seen people who do a 9 to 5, right? They do a 9 to 5. So they are busy at work. They are busy at work, but they want to become singers, right? If your daily activity, your network, the things that surround and consume you, if they are different from what you want to become, then you are just wasting your time. It will never happen. I don't know whether this makes sense. So you must try and create an alignment between your dream and the things you surround yourself with, because they will shape it. Yeah? You want to be a great prayer warrior, and you spend all your time, you know, watching, who are all these comedians? Basket Mouth. You spend all your time watching Basket Mouth. You can't be a prayer warrior. But if I want to be a prayer warrior, and every little time I have, I am listening to something on prayer, I am, you know, actually watching people pray, I am in the company of people that pray, people that talk about prayer, then there is an alignment. There's not a decoupling, it's a coupling. So you need those kind of coupling. All right, number 2 law is what I've called, is related to the law of the mirror. It is what I've chosen to call the law of the image transfer. Now, this is a marketing term, actually, but I'm going to use it for the purposes of this conversation. The law of the image transfer. All right. So what the mirror principle does is that very soon, as you continue to see certain things around you, the image gets transferred into you. So he is watching wrestling. He's watching all this wrestling with his father. His father is talking about wrestling. Gradually, that image is etched in his heart. All right? It gets etched in his heart. So there is a transfer of the image he's seeing into his own heart. So something gets ingrained in his mind. So the canvas of his mind was soon to be imprinted with a picture of the future. I'll say that again. The canvas of his mind gets imprinted with a picture of the future. He's seeing something today, it gets etched in his mind. Okay? He had a childhood dream then of becoming a wrestler. So that's what has happened now. So first, he's singing and watching all this wrestling. Next, he begins to dream to be a wrestler. So growth is a mindset. Growth is a mindset. In fact, it is first a mindset before it becomes a pursuit. Growth is first a mindset before it becomes a pursuit. I heard this story. You see, so two brothers had a drunk father. And one of them eventually became a drunk. The other became a very successful businessman. And they asked two of them, what made you become a drunk? And what made you become a successful businessman? Two of them gave the same answer. And what was their answer? Because my father was a drunk. Now think about that. Because my father is a drunk, that's why I became a drunk. The other one said, because my father was a drunk, that's why I decided not to be a drunk. I decided to be successful. All right? So growth is first a mindset, a mindset. So how do you interpret reality around you? So he sees this wrestling going on around him. He decides to become what he was seeing. So the guy who became a drunk was seeing his father a drunk and thought that was the way to live, right? It became his excuse. But the other guy sees his father a drunk and say, I will never be this. It became the push factor in his life that pushed him not to become the bad thing he was seeing. So growth is first a mindset, all right? It is a foundation. So when you say something is set, it is the foundation. So where your mind is set determines where your life will go. That's what it means. Where your mind is set determines where your life will go. So you know this mind and body connection. I've talked to some of you about this often and on, right? So you're running a marathon. You see, what keeps you going for the long haul is the resilience in your mind. You know, lately I've been watching, I love things about wars, you know, about investigation, about problem solving. And one of the groups I like watching their movies a lot is Israeli Mossad. Very strange, right? I love watching movies about some of the espionages they do across the world. I love watching some of the covert wars they do. I love watching, you know, how they will go into another nation and they will blow up things there. All right, how they will assassinate people. I love watching all those, right? And part of the training they get is this mental resilience, that in the face of the toughest kind of things, they are able to talk to themselves, recalibrate their mind, and they don't succumb to the pressures around them. They build their own entire reality. Yeah, because if you don't do that, you may never grow, because there are many challenges with growth. Right? It takes a lot of mental resilience. I'm telling you. I don't know how many of you have embarked on a project and you are asking yourself, who sent me? And you are tempted to give up on it. Yeah? I mean, I've been in that space over and over again. So it takes a lot of character. And that's why we say growth starts as a mindset, right? And so I will be asking you, what's on your mind? When you approach reality, how do you process it? What are the things you have called impossible? And I can tell you for free, it is simply because of what your mind is telling you about them. That thing you are seeing as impossible, someone else is seeing it as a possibility, really. And others have done it. Yeah. So it is what you say to your mind that matters. Matters a great deal, by the way. So some of the things that are facing you today, and you are looking at them and you are saying, I can't do this. I can't do this. Maybe look at them again. Find a reason why you can do it. Yeah? Because growth starts from your mind. The next thing I want to talk about, I want to just jump this and go, because there's a place I want to really elaborate, because that'll give us a lot of things to chew. So we go to the next one, and I call it the law of the binoculars. So you notice that the first three laws that we've been reviewing, they have to do with sight. So law of the mirror, what are you seeing? What's around you? Law of the image transfer, and so what you see gets imprinted in your mind. And then I have this law of the binoculars. Now, what does it say? What you focus on gets magnified. If you focus on something, you just make it bigger and bigger. Yeah. And that's what happens in relationships, in careers, and all sorts of things. So if I focus on my wife's faults, they get larger and larger. And they begin to get larger than the things she does right. Right? So whatever you focus on gets magnified. Okay. So what the image of the future, what's the image, the image of the future that's ingrained in your mind, is typically drawn and gets oscillated, enhanced. So what's happening? Mike Kenny is seeing these wrestlers, right? And then he wants to become like them. And what's the next thing we see? It becomes so big in his life that it outweighs any other thing. When he hears that people were coming, wrestlers were coming to his town, did you notice what he said? He said, I went there very early. And when I got there, he didn't go there just for entertainment. He went there for a purpose. He said, when I went there, I was looking out in the parking lot to see the wrestlers. I wanted to identify who wrestlers were. So he had more than an average interest in coming for that match. He wasn't coming for entertainment. He came to become. He came to become. You can write that down. He came to become. He came to become. All right? Have you seen where, something is holding and there are people that come into that session? They are just not coming as observers. They have more than an average interest. They are coming to be absorbed. They are coming. There is a purpose in their heart. All right? And this is exactly how it works. So it becomes, so what he had seen, what was imprinted in his mind, got so magnified, he couldn't see any other thing. So he comes to that arena, he's looking out for the wrestlers. He said he could identify them immediately. You see, a casual person will not identify them because they didn't have that level of interest. All right? So I've said somewhere that those who are, what do you call them now? So people who are mediocres, for instance, or ignorant. Yeah, I think let's use ignorant. So to be ignorant is not for a lack of knowledge, it's for a lack of interest. Think about that. Ignorance is not about lack of knowledge, it's about lack of interest. Because if you're interested, you will know. So when you're ignorant about certain things, it's not so much because you don't know, it is much more because you are not interested. All right? So he is drawn to the wrestlers in town at age 16. He gets drawn. Can I tell you something? There were so many people that would have come to watch that match, but their purposes were different. People came to be entertained. He came to become. He came to become. Don't forget that. He came to become. He came to become. So, in other words, in the end, growth comes through exposure. So what does he do? He did not only see them, he went and started interacting with them. Growth comes with exposure. You cannot want to grow in an area while being exposed to a counter or unrelated area. I said that before. Yeah? So, if I say I want to improve my writing, so I'm a writer, and I want to improve my writing, how much time am I exposing myself to writing workshops, writing conferences, writing that, trying to meet other writers, share headspace with them, have interactions with them? Yeah? So that would be the big question. Okay? So growth comes through exposure. So that's our challenge often. We carry one image in our hearts and we're exposed to a different image in our work. Right? You carry one image in your heart and then you're exposed to a different image in your work. You may not be able to escalate or accelerate the way you want to. So it creates a dysfunction in the growth patterns. It creates misalignment. It leads to frustration. All right. Next thing, I want to talk about sacrifice. I want to talk about the law of sacrifice or the law of the lamb. Mike did not only meet those wrestlers, he also offered to help with setting up the stage. And he even goes ahead to beg them for some wrestling moves. And did you hear him say they gave him some very hard punches and he didn't complain? He had to absorb it. Growth is a discipline. Growth is a discipline. So the question will be, this area you want to grow in, this desire that you have, this dream that you have, what are you prepared to sacrifice for where you want to go to? What are you prepared? What are you willing to sacrifice? If you love convenience, forget growth. And this is the truth. If you love convenience, forget growth. It takes heart-wrenching commitment to grow. Yeah? It is not palatable. So if you are driven by comfort, you can never embrace growth. Right? Yeah. So it takes discipline to start. It even takes more discipline to stay. It takes discipline to start. It takes even more discipline to stay. It takes even some more discipline to cease. Cease is my way of saying to complete what you have started. Yeah? So there are disciplines of growth. Disciplines of growth. Those disciplines of growth will include face your fears. It will include get up and walk. That's what Jesus told that, that man who was bedridden for 38 years. He said, get up and walk. If I say, get up, take up your bed. Right? So a number of us there are beds of comfort we sit. He said, take it up and walk. Yeah? So face your fear, get up and walk, focus on the goal. These are disciplines. You will keep seeing derailers if you don't focus on the goal. You will keep seeing detractors or distractors. Have delayed gratification, that urge to get something now. All right? Break it. Be committed regardless. All right? So you see what Mike does. He finally prevails on his parents to allow him enroll for, wrestling classes. And what did he tell us? Take note of this. It is a choice. He could have gone to watch that thing and comes back. But he insisted. So you need to make that choice. Take the decision to grow. It doesn't land on your laps. Growth doesn't land on your laps. It doesn't offer itself to you. You offer yourself to grow. Yeah? You offer yourself to grow. You need to get to work to grow. So what does he do? He tells us that he became a student in the daytime and a wrestler in the evening or night. It takes a lot. All right? It takes a lot. So that's where you now begin. Discipline will also involve developing, that habit, a culture around you. What are the routines you go through? And you keep repeating it. All right? So growth does not happen because you started a growth project or process. It comes down the line. It comes with you on the journey. It doesn't come with you on the journey. It meets you when you're already on the journey. So have that picture in your mind. It's not like when you're starting, growth is there with you on the starting point. No, growth doesn't accompany you from the start. It is somewhere down the line. As you keep coming, it joins you on the journey. That's the image I have in my mind. All right? So let's go to law 5. And please be putting your questions. I'm trying to rush this now. The law of the spring. The law of the spring. Yeah, congratulations, Stella. They say you are the most active person of the year. Yeah. To be ignorant is not lack of knowledge, but lack of interest. Amazing. That's from Esther. All right. Keep putting your notes and the thoughts that hit you there. So we go to the law of the spring, law number 5. What I've found is that you don't grow alone. Have you noticed? You don't grow alone. When you get started, somewhere along the line, you will win the respect of other people and they will support you to grow. So we grow with people. We grow with people, right? And so you find that there were several people along the line. His father that inspired him, the wrestlers he saw that he helped and gave him a few punches, The man who saw him in the locker room after the father had died and came to give him the advice, right? All of those people were critical in his journey. So we grow with people. So find that one person or that company that ignites and pushes you further. It's important. Find that one person. Find that right company. For me, I've had several people. You know, I've had the man who met me in my secondary school. I've told this story many times. I won't tell it here. The man who met me was our senior prefect when I was in my class 2 in the secondary school, who turned me from an average student to an excellent student. I don't forget him. He was one of the men that made me. My English teacher was one of the men that made me. My first manager when I joined banking was one of the men that made me. The manager that took over from him was one of the men that made me. My professional mentor, who grew to be a group managing director of one of the biggest banks in Nigeria, was one of the men that made me. All right? There are some bishops that have made me. Okay? So I call them the many men that made me. The many men that made me. So in your growth journey, you will find such men. Indeed, you need such men around you. So who do you have in your corner? You need to have a number of these kind of people in your corner. Right? If you don't have them, your growth will be very slow. So the quality and scale of people in your corner may determine how fast and how far you grow. All right? The quality and the scale of the people in your corner may determine how fast and how far you grow. And this is very important. Okay? So that's the law of the spring. Now I'm going to take some time because there are a number of things I'm going to cover in law 6. And please listen very carefully. This, for me, is the meat of this conversation. I call it the law of the seed. The law of the seed. The law of the seed. And this is what brings us to the conversation that wrestler that met Mike in the locker room, what that veteran wrestler said to him. Do you remember what he said to him? He said to him, every successful wrestler out there, they are just themselves, but they are themselves tuned up. They are themselves tuned up. In other words, we can be ourselves tuned down. All right? You can be a tuned down version of yourself. Even when you become yourself, you can be a tuned down version of yourself. So it tells him every wrestler who is successful is just content to be themselves, but themselves tuned up. Tuned up. Please let that image stay in your mind. Tuned up. What is it in you that you have tuned up? And what is it that you have not tuned up? Tuned up. I like that to keep ringing. Tuned up. Tuned up. What is it that you need to tune up? Tune up. Right? So what that means is that you find something unique about you and then you just amplify it. That's the other one. So Mike Kenny found his own. And it's interesting, that journey. I mean, you can use his example to actually build your personal brand. You saw the elements that came in, right? First of all, he can design, he can draw. So he started designing his stuff. He found a name. And he can be a funny guy. So he turned that into advantage. So he walks into, have you seen wrestlers come into the ring? They want to come in like very fierce, you know, very frightening. And they are screaming. And some of them will wear a costume that make them look like the devil to strike fear into the hearts of the people and to say, I'm going to win this match. Okay, very interesting. And you know what he did? He didn't want to compete there because that wasn't him. He was a funny guy. So he preferred to come into the ring as a nice, jovial, entertaining wrestler. And he had the crowd behind. So each time he's coming, the crowd is already cheering. That's what that meant. right? So he found some simple things. Remember what I told you before? Simple is special. Simple is special. Some simple things about him. And then he just tuned them on. Tuned them on. So he doesn't need to be that big, intimidating wrestler. He just needed to be himself. Okay? And he's enough. And I think that's very powerful. You are enough. You are enough. It was enough to be the best him ever. So you are also enough to be the best you ever. Okay? All right. So I think it was Stella that earlier mentioned, and that's in my note actually. All right? You are not called to do someone else. You are called to do you. Just do you. Just do you, and that's okay. Just do you. Remember what he said in the locker room? He said, I saw these big wrestlers and their moves and so on. He said, how can I ever become like them? Until the thought hit him. He didn't need to become like them. He just needed to be more of himself. More of himself. And can I say more of yourself? So the best wrestlers are just themselves. They tune themselves on. Okay? Because you will always fall short if you are trying to become something you are not catered for. You are not considered the way others are. So don't compete in your area of weakness. It will be such a funny exercise, right? Okay. So what do you need to do? Get into yourself and find what are those simple things about you, things that you are good at. You know, I've had to do this exercise. About 3 years ago, I started asking myself, when am I always at my best? When am I always at my best? And I found when I'm at my best is when I'm doing this thing I'm doing. When I'm talking to people, I'm at my best. I don't need to, I can come here and start talking without preparing because I'm so good in it. So I'm at my best when I'm empowering people. I'm having conversations with people. I'm trying to teach principles and so on and so forth. I'm at my best, right? And so instead of going to become the best data analyst, why don't I just find how best can I deploy this ability to break down things in simple forms and pass it on to people? Why don't I just do that, right? I've always thought that Paul couldn't speak like Apollos, and that was why he wrote like Paul. Yeah? Paul could not speak like Apollos. Apollos was a great orator. He couldn't speak like, he couldn't compete, right? They say he was a very boring person. In fact, do you know there's a proof of that? This man was so boring. He talked someone to sleep and the person fell off a window and fell down and died. So he had evidence to his boring nature and uncharismatic speeches, right? But what did he do? Instead of competing with Apollos in oratory, he wrote like no other person could write. So, what is that? Find something about you. Listen to the steps. Find something unique about you that you are good at. Blow it up. Blow it up. Amplify it. Grow it. And institutionalize it. Make it a brand. Institutionalize it. So that will be uniquely you. Yeah? I am Benjamin. Listen, I write like Benjamin. When I see what I write, even me, I recognize it. If something is not me, I also recognize it. I don't know how many of you have you heard of this gospel singer Phil Driscoll? Anybody heard about him? If you have heard about Phil Driscoll, go to the chat box and say yes. Anybody heard about Phil Driscoll? It's not your all this. Oh no. Okay, yes. Thank God, there's somebody that knows Phil Driscoll. Now, please check him on YouTube. He's now a very old man. But you see, a few days ago, I woke up and one of his songs, a line from his song was in my spirit. And I've not played Phil Driscoll for, I can't remember, maybe over 15 years. I used to have all his albums and so on and so forth. I started playing it, evergreen, right? He won a Grammy. He used to be a secular musician. He had won a Grammy before. Guess what? His voice is very unique. He has this raspy voice, like somebody who is scolding or growling, right? Jesus, I love you. Yeah? That's how croaky his voice is. But it's unique, very soft. In fact, it's known that he can go to multiple ranges. He can go to very high ranges in his voice. And he has a way of mixing all kinds of things. He will mix rock, mix it with pop, mix it with soul. He can combine all kinds of things in one song. Can I tell you his story? He has actually been convicted for drugs before. He took so much drug. It was drug that actually affected his voice. That was not his original voice. Drug affected his voice. But he had a decision to make. And his decision was either to say, well, drug, yes, he's a trumpeter. That's correct. I mean, if you just see Nathaniel Bassey, I'm sure, I will need to ask Nathaniel. I'm sure Nathaniel Bassey must have at one point or the other been inspired by Phil Driscoll. I'm telling you. Because what Nathaniel is doing, that's what he does. He synchronizes the trumpet with singing. You know, he just moves very gracefully from one to the other. He's an amazing guy. Yeah. And his son has started trumpeting also. All right. So he could have said, well, my voice is now damaged, so I can't sing any longer. But guess what? He turned that voice into a unique voice, a signature voice. All right? So excuses won't do. What you need is attention, not excuse. Give your gift some attention. All right? So, now, if you notice something, and there were some thoughts we're sharing, and I want to zero in on something, this is very important for me as I wrap this up. You notice that the three people that were given talents, you remember the parable of the talents in the Bible. One was given 5, one was given 2, one was given 1. Do you remember this? All of them worked hard on their talent. This will surprise you. All of them. All of them. Your church mind is telling you the man who had 1 talent, no, he buried it. He worked hard to bury it. The Bible says he dug the earth. Investing money and digging the earth, which one is most strenuous? He dug the earth. He exerted energy, digging the earth to bury it. What does that tell you? What was he doing? He was moving away from the talent he was given. So the more he was choosing something else that didn't come natural to him, right? It took a lot of labor to work on what was not natural to him. The more he was doing that, the more he was burying what was natural, what would have been easier, what would have been most fruitful. That's what you find. So for all of us, you are either investing your talent or you are working on your talent in reverse. Right? Because the more you run away from what God has given you, the more you bury it. All right? So you find people who are busy all through life, but they are busy doing the wrong thing. So again, business is not an excuse. Just pay attention to your gift. And so I'm going to talk to you about the seed. If you remember the parable of the sower, there were 4 kinds of deployments. They deployed. I was talking to my team over the weekend, last weekend, about this. There were 4 ways this sower deployed his seed, deployed his talent, deployed his gift, deployed his grace, his anointing, whatever you call it, right? But notice something. You find that in life, all you need is a seed. Your seed is your talent. Your seed is the grace you have. Your seed is the gift you have. The Indians call it namaste. Namaste, the gift in you, the gift inside. And that's what they greet. So when they are greeting you, they greet you, namaste. They do like this. They are speaking to the gift inside. And you notice something. Every seed God gives you is a good seed. Yeah. Thank you, Amarachi. Every seed God gives you is good. There is no bad seed. God does not give any bad seed to anybody. Every seed God gives is a good seed. And it is just good for you. It's a good seed. So I want to say to you, you have a good seed. You have a very good seed. You have no bad seed. So all you need to do, go back and identify what seed God has given you, what makes you different. Yeah, you need to identify it and prioritize it. Give it all your attention. All right. So in the parable, it wasn't an issue of bad seed or good seed. It was an issue of the soil. It wasn't about bad seed or good seed. So you either deploy it properly or you are not deploying it properly. So I'm going to walk you through this very quickly. There were 4 ways they sowed this seed, 4 patterns of sowing. And this happens to our gift. And I want to call your attention to that so that you might find a way to deploy your gift appropriately. Number 1 is what I've called pathway seeding. Pathway seeding. So here, it is when you have identified the gift in you, but you are treating it as a hobby. You are not giving it priority. It's just a hobby. It's a side thing. You are not giving it a chance to grow. So I'm good with writing, but I'm locked up in banking. I'll say that again. I'm good in writing, but I'm locked up in banking. And so once in a while, I can write something on Facebook. You are not giving a priority. So the issue is not an issue of good seed or bad seed. It's an issue of, are you giving a priority? Are you putting power behind it? Yeah. So when you treat your seed as a hobby, it is like casting it on the roadside, on the pathway, right? It is treating it as something accidental, something impulsive. You once in a while you manifest it. Okay, so there's nothing well thought out. It's almost pedestrian. Yeah, that was the seed that fell on the pathway. It is when you treat your gift as a hobby instead of as the main thing, as priority. All right. So sometimes accidentally we pick on some other life stuff along the way. What your village people do, what your peers are doing. All right. Those are roadside seeds. Okay. Number 2 is the shallow soil seeding. This is where, you see, in that parable, some of those seeds, they fell on a rocky soil, because they didn't have much earth. Remember, much earth. They didn't have much earth. They grew up quickly and then they died. So this is where you don't build discipline and consistency around your gift. You don't build discipline and consistency around your gift. You do it in a while and then it fizzles out. Yeah. So there is no structure, no continuity. You have a lot of passion, but a passion without structure, a passion without discipline, a passion without consistency. There is no root. There's no system you built around it. Yeah. That's the earth it lacks. So what if you picked that area of gifting and you started building, increasing the earth around it? So don't do emotional labor, emotional investing, less, investing without knowledge, exercising your gift without knowledge, no research around it, no trainings around it. So build it up, right? The next is what we call the red ocean investment, the red ocean seeding. Now, if you remember, in marketing, we have what we call the red ocean, and then you have the green ocean, right? So when you sow your seed in a toxic environment, so remember the thorns that we're all around, competitive, cutthroat competitive environment, you want to become like the other person, right? Instead of finding something unique about you, even in that area of gifting, there's something unique about you. There are many writers, but you see, I need to find my own unique voice. I need to find my own unique area that I focus on. but I try to compete because I've seen that this other man is writing about it, so I want to go and play in that space. You will not do well in it, right? You will be choked, and the thorns will attack your roots. You will be choked out of life. Finally, you have the niche seeding, niche, N-I-C-H-E, the niche seeding. So this is where the right seed finds the right soil, appropriate location for what you carry. Yeah, you find that the problem of the shallow soil wasn't that it was bad soil. Remember, all those soils were not bad soil, none of them. They were just not the right, they were not bad soils, they were not the right soil. So the issue is not about good or bad soil, it's about whether the soil is a fitting soil or an unfit soil. So where someone else will grow their gift, it may not be the location I can grow my gift. So in life, you find out that location and association, they are very critical. Location, association, location, association, location, association. All right? And the final law is the law of iteration, the law of iteration. In other words, growth has no destination or endpoint. It is never an event. Growth is iterating. It is an iterating process. It is not a destination. It is the journey. Growth is the journey. It is not a destination. There's a Japanese word, kaizen, K-A-I, and then Z-E-N, kaizen. It means constant and never-ending improvement. That's where you make growth very iterative. All right, so I'm going to stop there. If you go to the chat box, send that emoji of clapping because you need to clap for me. Yeah? Send that emoji of clapping. Just send it. Clap. Yes, thank you. 2 people clapping, 3 people, 4 persons, 5. Keep clapping. There are 39, 40 of you here. Clap for me. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Some have already unclapped. All right. Well done. Okay. So that's where I close. Amarachi. Do we want to? All right. So let's do a simple exercise. Okay. How did you find the session? Just go to the chat box. Let me know whether this has been helpful, whether, you learned something new, something was re-emphasized.